everybody. I'm standing between you and dinner, right? Tough position to be. I'm Canadian. You don't get Justin Bieber today, you get Paul Dupuis. Next best thing, huh? All right. Well, welcome and thank you for this opportunity. It's just great to be back in incredible India. Some of you I spoke to outside, some of you know me, some of you old friends, so it's long time no see to many of you. It's nice to meet you to many of you. I spent 4 years in incredible India. I'm going to tell you a bit of my story. Today's going to be some stories, and they're wrapped around purpose and they're wrapped around future readiness, which are two key themes for me. So I'm going to connect it with my own story and talk about what I think future readiness is really all about. So here we go. Well, for those who are dedicated to learning, we know that it's important sometimes to push pause, honor the past, and focus on the future. And of course, learn from the past. So I'm going to go back and show you a little bit of my past, some of the lessons learned, and we'll talk it in terms of leadership muscles. So, Canada, 1972. You know, like Indians who love cricket, Canadians love ice hockey. It's our religion. I grew up on the ice. I probably learned how to skate around the time I learned how to walk. And that photo's me, the little guy, with my brother in the backyard rink. And I show you this photo because my dad built that rink for me. First example of real leadership, eh? Dad who went out minus 30 degrees, putting on the scarf and the hat and building this rink for his boys. And I learned a lot of lessons on the ice. So anyone who's played sports or anyone who's had a hobby, you learn things from that. And I learned teamwork. I learned the importance of getting back up when you get knocked down. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you win, but we always bounce back. Resilience, right? An important muscle, which is important for the future. And my very first job was actually a paper delivery boy in Canada. It was a 365-day newspaper, morning newspaper. So think about that, 365 days, on the bicycle, in the winter as well, in the snow. So I learned the importance of delivering on the promise, and that's where I came up with this idea of promise of action. Anyone who's worked with me in Randstad and beyond knows that Paul always talks about what's your POA. Every single interaction should result in a promise, whether it's with each other as colleagues, with your customers, and so on. What is your promise of action? And that's where that was born, and that sticks with me today. And of course, discipline. During university, I'm from Windsor, Ontario. It's kind of the Detroit of Canada. I worked on the assembly line at Chrysler. I was a welder building the Dodge minivan. So I learned some important lessons. One, hard work. I don't want to do this forever, but boy, I learned some important lessons. 1988, I'll never forget when this word came in. First time we heard it, Kaizen. Does anybody know the word Kaizen? You've heard it? Okay. Kaizen is a very difficult word in Japanese, but when you simplify it, I define it as being better than yesterday. Very simply, being better than yesterday. That has stayed with me until this day. It's a very important muscle, the desire, the mission to be better than yesterday. So this young guy, I'm a little more aerodynamic now, but this young guy, 22 years old, 1990, I left my small town, first time on an airplane, first time out of Canada, fresh passport, and I went to Osaka, Japan. I wanted to do karate. I was going to stay 6 months. I was into karate. So I was going to go there for 6 months, go back to Canada, be a lawyer, live happily ever after. Well, that didn't happen. I ended up staying in Japan. I landed with my life savings, because I bought my plane ticket, bought my green suit that you saw there, and my red backpack, and I had exactly $300 Canadian to my name, and I slept on a park bench in Osaka my first night. Didn't know anybody in Japan, and that's where the adventure began. I got into Japan. I fell in love with Japan. I've now lived in Japan 4 times. I live in Tokyo now. Somehow I keep circling back to Japan. And of course, I got into the martial arts. I learned Japanese. I speak Japanese. Of course, I led Randstad Japan in Japanese. So it's really deep in my heart. And I also discovered along the way the importance of purpose. So this was where purpose comes into the conversation as a leader. I made my first trip to Cambodia in 1992 when Pol Pot was still in power. And the Khmer Rouge was running wild in Cambodia. And that's where I fell in love with the country. And I've been going there almost every year for many years as part of Hope International. I'm the former chairman. Microcredit projects and water projects as well. The importance of doing good. And then, if you recall, this day in Japanese history, probably in modern history, the most tragic day. It was the Kobe earthquake in 1995. The city was completely destroyed. I was there. And this literally shook me up and changed my ideas about life, what it means to be here on this planet. So I decided to become a teacher. I went back to Vancouver focusing on purpose, so that if I become a teacher, I can make a positive impact on the world by impacting the future, the children, the future leaders, and so on. Back to Japan. Again, I stayed in education for a while. I'll fast forward, and I got into recruitment. So I met this company called Randstad, an amazing company, Dutch company, 42,000 people all over the world, the leading company. And they approached me to be one of the 3 managing directors in Japan of a very domestic Japanese operation. And so I went in. And through that journey, I had an aha moment that leadership is actually really about enabling. What we do every day as leaders is enable those around us to shine. Ultimately, that's it. So if you gather great people and you create an environment where they can shine, I guarantee you the results will follow. And I certainly have proven that as a CEO. I've been in struggling organizations, fast-growing organizations, but that formula is always true. Of course, in Japan, you can see 95 offices, spent a lot of time with people in the field, as we say in Japanese, the gemba, right? And of course, reinforce the idea of leader as enabler. So then I got a call, which was a life-changing call from Amsterdam, the head office. My boss called, he said, Dutch guy, Robert Jan, he said, Paul, things are going well for you in Japan. I said, yeah, Robert Jan, thank you, really good. He said, good, time for a change. All the learning and development professionals know what I mean, right? Right? What? Time for a change, things are going well. Yes, time for a change, and I got it, you're right, Robert Jan. And he said, how about India? Yeah, deep breath, never been to India, know nothing about India. My wife's from Japan, by the way. We probably can't get too much further away in many ways, India and Japan. But the backpacker in me was immediately saying yes. But I said, let me check with my wife. So we came and took a look. We came to Bangor. The first thing we saw was the Bangor traffic. Okay, welcome to India, yeah. All right, that's okay, yeah. And then, of course, everything in Bangor. We took a look, and I just fell in love with it. Soon after, a few days later, my wife said, let's go. So it was a done deal. I got on the plane. Those of you who know the story of Randstad, it's in my book, by the way, and some of you know it very well because many of you were my trusted and important customers. You also know that Randstad went through some very difficult times. So I was sent over on a mission. This connects with the important leadership muscles of the future. And I'm being very transparent now because the statute of limitations is done. I've graduated from Randstad, so I can share the real story for you. And it's quite dramatic, but I'll give you a piece of it right now anyway. It was a loss-making business for 7 years after the acquisition of Ma Foi. It was siloed, very weak engagement. Some of this, I see some of you already nodding like maybe you have this issue in your organization. Huh? Low energy, the victim syndrome, blame culture, high attrition, lack of a clear purpose. In Good to Great by Jim Collins, they call it the doom loop. That was the situation in Randstad, India. Out of 38 countries in the world of Randstad, India was number 38, worst performing country and also a risk from key control framework standpoint, compliance, and I was sent to fix it. So here was the mission, kind of like Mission Impossible, but we'll call it possible, because fast forward, we ended up doing it. That's my big boss from the Netherlands, and he issued me the challenge, and this was it. Steady the ship, stop it from sinking, make tough decisions, courageous decisions, a very important muscle I came to develop here in India, achieve profitability, get out of the red, and ensure future readiness. The word future readiness was really planted inside me in 2017 when I arrived in India. I'll add this on. What is the mission of the leader? To enable future readiness from every single member of the organization to the organization as a whole. And that became my mission. Oh, by the way, you got 18 months, Paul. So I got on the plane to incredible India, and it began. The first 90 days. I think all of us have read the book. It's a wonderful book. It's a classic, The First 90 Days. Well, my first 90 days, I decided to get into the field and meet with people, to learn, to really understand. I called it a pulse check. Okay? And I traveled all over the country. Sometimes cost-cutting initiatives, grabbed an auto in Chennai, and got to the client meeting on time. But I saw incredible India with my own eyes. I went through the four corners. I got on trains to Bhubaneswar and Jamshedpur and Bihar, and I went all over the place to be with our colleagues, to be with clients, to be in touch. And that was a reminder of the importance of leader as in touch. And I also discovered something, that every single voice is important in the organization. We sometimes focus on the top layers, N-1, N-2, but where the real work happens, where the real impact happens is actually on the front line, and it's so important to be in touch. And then I discovered something which I call AIR. The answers are in the room. Any challenge that you face, if you gather smart people together and you listen to them and you give them a chance to speak, you give them a voice, the answers are in the room. And I learned that firsthand in Randstad, India. There's a quote from Epictetus who said many, many, many thousands of years ago that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. This is very profound, isn't it? 2 ears, 1 mouth. A very important leadership quality. Listen more than you speak. Peter Drucker, we'll fast forward to more modern days, said something very similar. He said the leader of the past knew how to tell, the leader of the future knows how to ask. Again, very powerful and an important muscle, the ability to listen, the ability to ask rather than tell. You know, in this world of disruption, it's easy to get lost. It's not just disruption, it's interruption. And so the importance of what we call true north emerges, and that's also something that I learned. And here's an interesting thing. And when I wrote the book, I kind of discovered this, that the leaders that thrive during times of crisis versus those who survive. The organizations who thrive versus those who survive. There's a big difference. Think of COVID for a moment. Some organizations struggled big time, most did, but some actually thrived. And what we discovered when we analyzed is that the leaders and the organizations who thrive focus on why. More than the how and the what and the how many and so on. So the most effective leaders focus on why. So the why-centric, the purpose-centric leader is the most effective leader. And that's also a really important muscle to think about when we talk about future readiness. How much are we talking about why in our organizations? And as learning and development professionals, I'm sure you start every conversation with why, right? A wonderful quote from Jim Rohn. When the why is clear, the how is easy. Easy might be an over-exaggeration, but you know what I mean. When you start with why, that's your North Star, your true north, and you hold on to that why, and you begin every conversation with it, eventually the rest falls into place. So, Randstad, India, the dirty details are in the book. You can read it if you'd like, maybe a future Netflix drama, but we turned it around. Not only turned it around, we brought it from number 38 to number 1. India became number 1 in the world of Randstad on every metric. Year-on-year growth. Thank you. Well, thank you for clapping for me, but actually it's these folks right here. You know, who was I to come to India, to parachute in to an organization of 75,000 people and be the only non-Indian who've never been to India? What I did was I came and I shifted into enabling mode because I sure couldn't teach. I had no frame of reference, but I knew how to enable people. And I probably lit a few fires along the way, right? Got people excited. And we did it. And you may know some of these leaders. I'm sure many of you know Anjali, my CHRO, who's wonderful, and Vishy, who's now the CEO, was the CFO. And we hit some best ever results. The wind was at our backs, spotlight was on India, great things happening, and then boom. This seems like so long ago, but it was really just a few minutes ago when we went through COVID. And I was leading the ship through COVID. And this was a critical point in my leadership journey. And I think all of us as leaders built an important muscle here I want to share with you. Again, the importance of purpose. That at the end of the day, what is the role of the leader, especially in times of crisis? It comes back to purpose. Why are we here? For those of you who have been in learning development for a long time, you remember the old days when IQ was a predictive part of deciding whether someone was going to be on a path to becoming a leader. In other words, if you were smart, you're highly predictive of becoming a good leader. What did we learn? Smart people are not necessarily the best leaders. Isn't it interesting? So what came next? Do you remember? Hey, there we go. Okay, EQ. So if people have an emotional quotient, in other words, they're empathetic. We started to measure empathy. It became a KPI, being empathetic, being feeling. How do you measure that? Well, it became important, right? Very empathetic. And what I discovered during COVID is empathy is not enough, because when you look up the dictionary definition of empathy, it means feeling how the other person's feeling. Well, we lost 150 people, members of Randstad in India during COVID. And I was on calls with family every day. And just talking about it, I get a bit emotional. It was such a tough time. And I was so frustrated because I was feeling for them, but I couldn't do anything. Because empathy is just feeling. And that's where the next muscle of leadership was born in my mind. And this is about future-ready leadership. The CQ. Can you guess what that is? Somebody just said it at the back, I think, yeah. The compassion quotient. Empathy is feeling, compassion is doing. So of course we need to be empathetic. First you got to feel. Next it's about doing. And I know all the organizations in this room, we all have stories that we can tell of things that we did where we rallied together to help not only our employees, but the communities, their families, and so on. And Randstad, of course, being a Dutch company, we worked with Philips to get oxygen concentrators, and we saved lives. We literally saved lives. So converting empathy to compassion is a key critical muscle of the future-ready leader. We learned that important lesson during tough times. So my purpose, I want to share it with you. My guiding principle, my true north, is to do well. I want to be the best I can be at whatever I'm doing. When I was CEO, I want to be number one. I want to be the best. Father, son, husband, hockey player, whatever. I just want to be the best I can be. But that's not enough. That's not a full life in my mind. It's important to also do good. Do something good for the world. And I know many of the organizations in the room are committed to doing this. We also need to encourage our leaders to do this, to walk the talk on doing good and doing well and doing good. We all know VUCA, right? VUCA was actually created in 1987. You may know this. The US military created the concept. This is all about a military situation, right? If you think about it. Volatile, uncertain, complex. And they came up with their way of navigating through it. And they're very, very good at it, right? Well, VUCA's a bit old now. A new one was born called BANI. Have you heard of this? Yeah? Okay, how about this one? You've heard of tuna? Yeah? It's, let's say, the most recent, and I'd say cutting edge. So if you haven't heard of it, please take it away and use it. You'll impress people by your cutting edge knowledge. Turbulence, uncertainty, novelty, ambiguity. Leaders need to be able to deal with each of these elements. And they need to be able to deal with it in an agile way, in a compassionate way. So tuna, whether you like tuna or not, embrace it because it's here. This is our world now. So what's the role of L&D in all this? In this crazy world that we're in now, where compassion's important, where purpose is important, where we're in that can of tuna. Well, one is, of course, we know our leaders start as being tactical. Most leaders they start from the ground, from the dirt, right? We all kind of come from here, and we are comfortable being tactical. That's what we know. We need to help leaders move from tactical to being strategic. And the way you be strategic is you co-create. It's a journey. You don't do it alone. And from strategic, we go to visionary. And visionary leadership is a muscle. It can be built, absolutely can be built, but it takes hard work. And visionary leadership is not about being a fortune teller. It's about having the wisdom based on past experiences to peek around the corner before you get there. It's a muscle that can be built. Of course, the combination of tactical and strategic are important, but there's one more that I've discovered, and I'm thinking a lot about it recently. I'm talking about it, I'm writing about it. It's called reflexive leadership. And that is that response we have without thinking to a situation. If you're a sales leader and your team doesn't hit their target, that immediate response that you have, right? When you're an HR head and you're about to have a meeting, it starts at 2 o'clock and your team walks in at 2:01, that immediate response you have when the blood boils, right? Those little things that we have an instinctive response to, those are reflexes. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. Reflexes can be learned and can be unlearned. In order to ensure leaders are future ready, we need to help them identify their good reflexes and the bad reflexes and help them build more of the good ones. So, looking ahead, why am I here today? Why did I come over from Tokyo? Well, a few reasons, actually. I'm doing a number of things. I'm an external advisor to Bain Consulting now, working on projects around the world. After graduating from Randstad, I'm doing some management consulting, writing another book, doing some guest speaking, and so on. But I've just created a new e-learning program and a mastermind program. I want to share a little bit with you. Some of you have spoken to me outside, so I'll share a bit more about it. I had an aha moment, which is really back to future ready. And I'm an athlete, I guess you could say. I'm heading towards 58 years old. I still play ice hockey, still walk my 10,000 steps every morning. I walked Cubbon Park this morning, as I did when I lived here. And I thought about this in terms of leadership is a set of muscles that we can build. And where do you build muscles? Well, you go to the gym, right? So why not create a leadership gym? So it's a bit of a fun concept. It starts with an e-learning program, which is 15 episodes of me talking about leadership. 5 to 7 minutes each. There's an assignment at the end, which is an exercise. So we frame it in a way, okay, now it's time to go to the gym. Let's go. Let's build those muscles. And then it leads into a mastermind program, which I've co-created with Marshall Goldsmith And Marshall, if you know him, he's my coach and a good friend of mine and has helped me along this journey as well. So the future-ready leader really builds future-ready muscles. Sorry, go back here. It's the muscles. And these are just examples, but for a long time we were autocratic, we were directive, we were pace-setting, we were logical, we were results-oriented, but we realized we also need to do the right side. And it's not about one or the other, it's about a meter and helping leaders understand where they need to be and also build those muscles to be able to use all of those muscles. Those of you who have done an MBA, you've studied path goal leadership, path goal theory, you've studied situational leadership as well. We know there's 4 quadrants of leadership, right? Each of these are muscles. All of us default to one of these categories, sometimes 2, but we're comfortable usually in 1 or 2. Directive, do it. Achievement-oriented, target, 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 result, right? Participative, let's go. Roll up sleeves, let's go. Supportive, come on, we can do this. I'm here to help you. An effective leader, the future-ready leader, is someone that can navigate through all of these and also be self-aware to understand where they need to be and where they don't need to be at the moment. We hear a lot about transformation. Well, it's a gradual process. We know that. It doesn't happen overnight. And I'm going to talk about how these 2 things, as I wrap up, how these 2 things, these magic weapons, have helped me along my journey as a leader. So I arrived in India, as you heard. I knew a lot about this thing. I told you, 1988 on the assembly line at Chrysler. I took this into my world as a leader. I use Kaizen every single day. And in Japan, it's easy because everybody gets it. Get rid of the muda, right? Get 1% improvement, quality control, round table, all that stuff. Okay, I did all that. It takes a long time. It's slow, it's meticulous, but it's important and it works, right? Then I arrived in India and discovered this thing. And then I heard it's controversial. People in home, Jugad, bad, Paul, bad. Really? And then I saw on the streets of India, all over examples of Jugad. And I was like a tourist. For 4 years, I was taking photos. Every time I saw something cool with contraption, with bicycle, with carrying a whole household furniture, and I think, wow, this is amazing, the creativity. So here's the way I want to present it to you. Kaizen, focus, quality, 1 degree of improvement, meticulous, commitment to improvement, consensus, right? Ingenuity, creative, let's do this, let's move fast, let's just figure it out. Now imagine if you take those 2 and you marry them. That to me is the most magical combination. That's the challenge I'd issue to all of you, to bring Jugad together with Kaizen when you're out there developing the leaders of the future in your organizations. Build a culture of speed and quality, of focus and creativity. These are wonderful elements that can be married together. That's something I'm committed to doing. In my book, I talk about the 5 E's, which is really about future-ready leadership, and each of these has a story, each is a series of muscles, so on. And then, so I was with Marshall about a month ago in Nashville. I went to his house, and we went for a ride in his, he's got a very cool red, old convertible. We're driving down the streets of Nashville, Tennessee, with country music on the radio, and I said, Marshall, I'm going to challenge you. We have some interesting debates from time to time. I said, Uncle Marshall, I call him Uncle Marshall. Uncle Marshall, you said in your book, what got you here won't get you there. I don't agree. He said, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? I think a lot of what got me from there to here is going to get me to the future. He said, oh, yeah, but it's not enough. That's the aha moment. A lot of what got us from there to here will be useful in the future, but it's not enough. And as L&D professionals, we need to remember that. Yeah? It's not enough. What are the muscles we need for the future? So I'm going to just quickly play a video. I think will this work if I hit play? Yeah. So I had a lot of fun about 5 months ago in a studio. It was a church, Padma? Padma was helping me do that. And we were in a green screen studio. This church, talk about Jugad in a way. During COVID, the bishop needs to reach the parishioners. How do you reach the parishioners? Well, you need to preach using technology. They built a professional quality studio in this church. And now they've turned it into a business because COVID's done. So we rented it out for 3 days in the green screen. I'm not a professional host or speaker or whatever, so a lot of edits, a lot of redos. We had a lot of fun, and at the end we even did a little Bollywood dance. All right, to wrap up, learning and development. I'm going to propose to you and even challenge you to drop the development word. I don't like it. Somehow it was dropped on you, by the way. Did you choose the title Learning and Development? Anybody? From today, I think you are the L&G professionals. Thank you. Who said that, by the way? Well done. Yes, absolutely agree. You are all about growth, and you could even say enabling growth, right? So wouldn't it be great if we started every day from that stance now as leaders, as L&G professionals, that our mission is to help the organization grow. How do we do it? We help our people grow. We enable them to grow at every stage of their journey with the organization. And we know what all the benefits are of that, right? They stay with us, they grow with us, they perform, and they live their best lives. All right, so I'm going to stop here. The leadership, future-ready leadership, Jim, is something I'm really excited about. It's the next stage of my journey. It is Envision to execution. 1 year ago, I had a call from Amsterdam to move to the next stage of my journey within Randstad, and I politely said no thank you, which surprised a lot of people, and I got off the bus. And now I'm doing what I really, really love. I'm helping organizations be future ready, and I love India, so I'm spending a lot of time in India working with organizations using this. So again, I want to thank you for listening to me, and thank you for all the great conversations I've had so far, and look forward to having some more after this. Thank you.